The Isleworth Crown Court in West London today adjourned to January 5th. The case involving the Ghanaian lady at the center of a raging cocaine scandal. She earlier pleaded guilty to the charge of trafficking and illegally possessing cocaine. Nayele Pleads told the court via video link from her prison that she was guilty of the offense and would be sentenced on her own plea. So what is her fate going to be from now on, and how will her guilty plea affect any sentence? How is the Ghanaian community in the United Kingdom reacting to this news? This is today's big story with me, Stephen Enti. Now, Nayele Pleads, the Ghanaian lady arrested in London on November 10th with a 12.5 kg of cocaine, today pleaded guilty to the charge of trafficking and illegally possessing cocaine. Nayele's arrest has generated huge controversy in Ghana, with the matter assuming a horrible political dimension and name-calling. A couple of arrests have been made in Accra in relation to the same case. Let's now get to our reporter George Wiafi back onto the line for a quick narrative. George, good evening. Right, we're trying to get George Wiafi on the line. George Wiafi earlier got onto the telephone with us to update us that Nayele joined the court via a video link and pleaded guilty. Dr. Kwesi Ening is joining us also on the telephone. Good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening.
Now, these gangs and their networks in Accra, the drug gangs, I mean the various cartels which deal in drug-related businesses. I mean, Nayele has been arrested. Nayele appears to have pleaded guilty. Will this guilty plea perhaps dampen the operations at least slightly?
Well, absolutely not. I think we need to understand certain things. You've used certain terminologies, cartel. We are not sure if there are any cartel. That's number one. Number two, this woman's strategy of pleading guilty sought to save the UK government some money in terms of the legal process, and by that, hopefully get a more lenient sentence. I don't think that will wash.
Okay. Because
the criminal justice system is smarter than that. Two, I mean, she's been caught. She's willing to sacrifice herself for payment and for protecting the network that supported the transportation of these drugs. So it will not have any impact on the business at all. I've been asking certain questions. A, how many kilos of drugs actually entered Ghana? Through which of our ports? How many kilos have already left undetected? And how many remains in Ghana? The ones that remain in Ghana, these guys will still attempt to take it out of the country. This is big business. And not even the death of this man in prison will divert people's attention and their drive to sell more cocaine. We have become, though a microcosm, a major cog in the wheel, both for the transit of these drugs and also at a destination point.
It's very scary the way you're putting it. So Nayele
don't blame me. Don't blame me.
I understand. I
am only telling the truth. So
that's
why
right.
do you feel scared?
That's right. I mean, the reality for those of us who are standing back and do not really appreciate.
Well, then please, you know what? Next time, call those who are paid for by government to protect you and I.
That's right.
I am only using my pocket money and my free time to say I want to be an old man, put my feet up, drink my malt whiskey, have my grandchildren running around me, and hopefully, if I fall in love again, have my life around me. So my aim is actually of self-interest and self-protection.
That's right.
I don't seek to cause fear at all.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I agree perfectly with you. Now, she appears to be taking the fall for the various people who are linked to this operation. Do you think that by just pleading guilty, the case may just die a natural death and she will go to prison, maybe finish her sentence and resume her life?
Absolutely not. You see, the UK system is sophisticated. They are used to interrogating people and getting the information that they need. So she pleaded guilty. She will go in And except if this network has protective mechanisms in the UK prison, it will be a very small fly, and she will be dealt with in prison. So this is actually the beginning of the unraveling of the real case. And I can assure you, there are quite a number of people in this town who are quivering in their boots tonight.
I see. I mean, you have also constantly made reference to the fact that Ghana has become a destination point for illicit drug, particularly cocaine. Does this case confirm anything at all?
Oh, certainly does confirm. If you remember, sometime last year, I had been quite critical of the manner in which we had handled this cocaine case. And some so-called couples came on air, Dr. Enin is seeking a job from the president. And I think now I can put my feet up and laugh at them. You see, we have been given a false picture that we've curbed this business and it's under control. We can't curb this business. We are just a cog in the wheel. And until there's a general West Africa-wide strategy to respond to it and change people's perceptions about the economic spin-offs that arise from this trade, and actually let people understand the long-term negative impact on our health and our health systems, driving legitimate business underground, increasing the cost of doing business, driving away foreign direct investment, we are far from it. Right now, the rhetoric is beginning to change. I think people are beginning to realize that this business poses an existential threat to Ghanaians, and that maybe we all need to raise our voice.
That's right.
But that is about 10, 15 years away. Now, to get that generalized national drive to change will take some time.
Will take some time. You also mentioned West Africa-wide strategy. Do you see the West African leaders rising up to such a task of perhaps creating a regional operation or a regional strategy to deal with a drug menace?
Oh, I think in terms on the rhetorical plane, yes. For the past 10 years, the Economic Community of West African States, together with African Union, have actually developed multiple strategies.
Okay.
But one is developing the strategy. The second is putting the money that's needed to drive the strategy on the table. And I think our government across the sub-region have not been too good in putting the money on the table. So there's a certain lacuna between the political rhetoric and the actual operational activity.
Now, Dr. Enin, the Operation Westbridge and the government of Ghana collaborations, I do know that since NACOP's statement and the various interpretations or readings that were put to it, there have been questions over whether there is sufficient cooperation between Westbridge and the Ghana government in the fight against drugs. Not only Westbridge, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency is also in some form of collaboration with the government of Ghana. Do you see that this arrest in particular is going to make things a little bit difficult, or is perhaps exposing cracks in the cooperation?
Oh, I think one thing that we need to understand is that all forms of cooperation will at one point or the other go through some upheaval. The Westbridge Corporation has run fairly well since 2006. So at a point in time, something had to give. I suspect that there are backdoor negotiations right now, trying to mend fences. You see, because we need cooperation. Of course, the UK also does. But this is a wider thing involving the French, the Spaniards, the Dutch, the Belgians, the Portuguese, and the US. You know, so there's a need for us to truly say, how do we get this partnership reconfigured? How do we rebuild trust? How do we ensure that we can begin to share sensitive information? You see, because if we want to think counterfactually, if somebody can carry 12 kilos of cocaine onto a plane, the person can carry 1 kilogram of a bomb onto a plane.
That's right.
So there are some tough questions that we need to answer. We need to regenerate trust, and we need to demonstrate to our partners that we can be trusted and we are open for business. So this case is not just about the individuals involved here.
That's right.
This is about our national reputation,
Mm.
the networks that Ghana as a nation has built internationally over time, the trust of the ICAO in terms of our airport security. So all these things have been put at risk. But from where I sit, those who matter have a lot of work to do, convincing first the people of Ghana that there is seriousness about the fight against drugs.
Dr. Nin, we've also heard reports that this case in particular is putting a certain negative light on Ghanaians living in UK and traveling and using various airports across the world. Do you foresee that subsequently Ghanaians might have a tough time going to...
They have a tough time already. They are bad Ghanaians elsewhere. Actually, it's those of us who travel who are given a hard time. I think I passed through Heathrow a day after this case broke, and it wasn't a nice experience.
Can you tell us exactly what they did to you or the checks you had to go through?
Oh, I mean, one is used to being met at the door of the plane in Frankfurt, but in UK hardly ever. But since this appeared, I mean, as I arrived in Heathrow on my way elsewhere, was stopped, or all of us, quite a number of the passengers were routinely stopped, asked all kinds of questions. Very politely, very British, very fair. You know, you had to demonstrate where you were going, show your papers and all that. First, we thought it was quite strange. But it was when this case started to unravel that we understood that, well, probably, this was what was happening.
And now there is also the various pronouncements from both sides of the political bloc, the minority and majority seeking to put blames on one another here and there. Do you think such pronouncements are helping?
Oh, far from it. And I think the finest statement was the one made by Dr. Abladek yesterday. I mean, I think people need to keep on reading that to their listeners. We haven't helped ourselves at all. And truly, if we don't see this business as an existential threat to Ghana, then we are not doing ourselves any service at all.
So what does the future look like for enforcement? I mean, to make sure that, one, our country does not continue to grow as a hub or a transit point for illicit drugs, and also to make sure that the operations of these groups or gangs or cartels, I might be using the wrong expressions, are actually clamped here in Ghana?
Well, I think we've got about 40 years of hard work ahead of us. First is that we seem as a nation to admire and marvel people who get unexplained money. The political class is still using this as political football. So there's no real direction and drive, you know, towards responding to this challenge. So there's a bit of hard work ahead of us. Real hard work.
Yeah.
I don't foresee that coming close. You see, the call for bipartisan commission is very useful and is very welcome. Civil society has been calling for that for 10 years. And I wonder if it will get traction, if it will get political traction. If it did, it would be very useful for all of us.
Right. Dr. Eden, we're grateful for your time on today's Big Story, and as always, very grateful to you. Let's get... Yes, sir. Right, let's get on to the other telephone line now. We have George Riafi, who's our reporter in London, joining us. George, good evening.
Good evening, Stephen. How are you doing?
I am fine, thank you. Now, we've spoken to you earlier, and you gave us a narrative of how Nayele Pleads joined the court with her plea via video link and all of that. I mean, a couple of hours have gone by. Is there anything you can report?
Well, Steve, I don't know whether earlier on I was able to explain to you that January 5, the judge that part on this case, the Crown Court would pronounce his verdict on this matter.
I see.
And that will be done after the prosecutor has been able to establish whether the substance that Nayele was carrying was indeed cocaine.
Cocaine.
And even with respect to the amount, whether it is still 12.5 kilograms more or even less than that one.
I see. So on January 5th, we should expect the case to be more like closed. I mean, that will be the final day that there will be a judgment on this matter.
From what transpired today, His Honor Judge Edimoze would actually pronounce his judgment on this matter. But first, all those things have to be established. And one interesting thing that came up was that the defense counsel, or the lawyer for Nayele Pleads, was even pushing for a sentence today. And if the judge was even, I mean, they were ready for a sentence or a final ruling on the matter today, but the judge insisted that that forensic audit needs to be done to establish whether the substance was cocaine or not. And then he would
so George, if I understand you clearly, you're saying that the lady's lawyer, her legal representative, was actually pushing to get a quicker, to expedite the process and get a judgment today.
You're right, Steve. And that was when they were arguing, the two lawyers were arguing for a date to be set for the final hearing, because the prosecutor was pushing for 2 weeks' time, and the judge said that no, 2 weeks' time could be Christmas Day, and I'm not prepared to sit on this issue on Christmas Day. And then the counsel for defense came in and said that, well, I would opt for January 5, but my lord, if you are ready, we are ready for a final ruling on this matter today.
Right, I see. That's interesting. Were you able to interact or speak to this counsel?
The counsel wasn't, forthcoming with information. And it was very, very difficult. When the case finished, she called some people who were there, about 6 people, I think 4 ladies and 2 gentlemen who claimed to be friends and relatives of Nayele, into a room and then spoke to them. And that is what I could, trying to get details from her. She wasn't cooperative at all with me, Stephen. That was the difficulty here. I
see. Very interesting. So George, I will ask you a couple more questions and then we'll let you go. We know that you're a bit busy right now. I'm concerned about how the media in general, whether the British press or other African-related networks, have covered this case. How has it been covered?
They were heavily represented here, especially the Ghanaian community and the Ghanaian media here in the UK. I also saw one white guy, Simon Israel from Channel 4, who was reporting for his network as well as other network. And he saw this as a very big case because of, where there are concerns that this lady in question is linked to certain powerful people and all those things. And for them, as the British press, they thought that this was something worth following. So the media was heavily represented here, Steve, both the local community as well as the foreign media as well, Steve.
Right. I wanted to get a fair idea of what has been put on the media, for example, BBC or Sky TV, whether they've been...
I'm yet to get the final reportage out there, because it could go through some editing and all those. But from what I gathered here, they will quite be heavy on this particular ruling in terms of some of the TV stations that I also saw. So, but as in the final piece, I haven't seen that piece.
Right, Jory, we are grateful. It must be very cold in London by now, and
somewhere around 8 degrees.
You must be chilling. Enjoy your stay in London and come back safe to us. Thank you very much, George Riafi. And then we're also joined on the other telephone line by Captain Retired in Karabia Efa Date, who is a lawyer. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
We're grateful. Now, let's explore the legalities of this. A guilty plea and a not guilty plea. Does it affect this case in any way? Is it likely that Nayele Pleads might get a lenient sentence for quickly pleading guilty, or what?
Not in the least at all. Not in the least at all. You see, there are certain offenses that maybe when you plead guilty, you are given a light sentence. For instance, you are caught with driving without license, or you are driving without insurance, or you are driving and you pass through red light. These are common offenses at the motor court where, when you plead guilty, you make the judge, give you a light sentence and you go away. But having said this, if you are charged with stealing and you plead guilty, you are in trouble. If you are charged with fraud and you plead guilty, you are in trouble. If you are charged with murder or these felonies, or if you are charged with offense like narcotics and you plead guilty, it means you reflected seriously on the matter, you planned it, and you took a calculated risk which has blown up. They will punish you heavily. Most judges will give you maximum sentence.
I see. That's very interesting. So, if you were the legal representative of Nayele Pleads, would you have advised her today to plead guilty?
No, never. In fact, it's a standard advice that never plead guilty. Never plead guilty. I would have advised her to plead not guilty, and then we go through the mail.
I see.
If along the line, when tempers have slowed down, when interest in the matter has waned, and it is now one of the routine cases in the courts, and we're going up and down, then you can slip through a change of plea to one of guilty, you get some light sentence, and you go away.
I see. So,
but first day on arraignment before the judge, then you say, I am guilty to narcotics, 12 kilograms. My goodness. So it's a bad advice. Whoever told her to plead guilty.
I see. Bad advice. So, I mean, on what basis do you say it's a bad advice? You fairly explain what you would have done, but bad advice, maybe she has been influenced in a way to take a fall for those who are behind her operations. You wouldn't think so?
Maybe, like you said, those behind her operations. But it is bad advice because, all over the world, there is this campaign against drugs. When you watch Euronews, CNN, BBC, and all the international networks, once in a while you hear that the police have busted some drug barons, the police have busted some drug mafia. All over the world, there's a concerted effort to check drug crimes. So when you are arrested in connection with one, and with all the television cameras on you and the media, and an international crime like this, a passenger aboard a plane arrives in London and the Heathrow airport is arrested by routine checks, and then they take you to court, and on day one, you plead guilty. Well, maybe you are doing so in order to quickly cover up whatever had gone on behind all the arrangements and so on, so that nobody's name will be mentioned and all the speculation and rumors may all come to rest. Probably yes. But it also brings you up as a sacrificial lamb, and the law will deal heavily with you. If I were part of the legal team, or if I were to have known any of those people among who are behind her, I would have recommended that at least on day one, don't plead guilty and put everything in issue and let everybody wonder what is happening, what is going to happen, are they going to get witnesses and this and that. And then maybe on the third or fourth occasion, when everything seems as if they are getting ready to build a docket to pile up witnesses and cross-check this, and then you can slip in a guilty plea, and you might get away leniently.
I see.
But on day one, day one is dangerous.
It's very dangerous. You made a point clear. Now, what do you predict will happen from now till January 5th when the final hearing comes off?
What I am expecting to happen is that the little I heard today indicates that even though the lawyers were pleading for a very short adjournment so that they can finish with this matter, the judge insisted that he wanted the forensic evidence or forensic investigation to establish that the substance was indeed cocaine. So I'm expecting that on the next adjourned date, which I hear is January 5th or something, when the case is called, the judge will finally pronounce the conviction, and then maybe there will be this request for addresses on mitigation of sentence if possible, and then the judge will look at the scale of sentencing, the maximum penalty that is allowed by the law, and then within his discretion he may impose sentence. But honestly, I don't feel comfortable. I think the plea is a bit too too early.
I see. So is it also, let me just ask you this. You know, there being a couple of arrests in Accra and related to this. Will it have any effect at all on these arrests and how quick they will be prosecuted to in Ghana?
You've asked a good question. I don't know what the lawyers in Ghana here, but I'm sure they are definitely not going to advise their clients to plead guilty. And they will go through the mill, except that the sitting judge will have at the back of his mind that even if you people are saying you are not guilty, the truth of the matter is that the woman herself has admitted the offense and has been convicted in UK. So you here, you are wasting my time.
I see.
Something that, that will be the thinking of the judge. But I guess with good advocacy and good strategizing and good planning, it's possible to get away with a very, very lean penalty.
And is it possible that she can negotiate for reduced sentence? You did mention that pleading guilty on day one could possibly mean that she will get the maximum sentence. Can she plead for mitigation to reduce her sentence?
Yes. What I'm expecting is that when the court resumes and the court invites the lawyers for Ruby to say something in mitigation, I'm sure they would make capital out of the point that the woman has not wasted the time of the court. The resources of the British government have not been stretched to any degree because the matter has been disposed of as quickly as possible. And so the court should take that into account. But the prosecutor will reply and rebut this heavily by saying that it only means that the woman knew what she was doing. And she deliberately planned it and intended to break the law, and so she should be used as an example to let people be scared of taking such a risk. It doesn't sound good at all.
It doesn't sound good at all. Captain, you recall that there was a while ago there were two British teenagers who were caught in a drug trafficking at Kotoka International Airport, and their government actually requested their extradition back to the United Kingdom to serve their sentence there. Can Nayele Ametepe do the same? Can the government of Ghana, perhaps after she's being sentenced, request that she serves her jail term here in Ghana?
I am not too familiar with the law on this particular aspect, but I guess it is possible for the government to make such a request, especially if certain specific stated reasons can be given, like medical grounds and so on. But let me concede that I am not too familiar with the specific provisions of the law in this area.
I see. I mean, even if you were, would you have advised government to do that, considering the murky controversies that have surrounded responses that were made on behalf of Nayele Ametepe? Should government even consider that?
Well, let me say yes and no. In the interest of Ruby, look, I would say that British prisons are far, far, far better than the conditions here in our prisons. And so, in a place like Britain, for instance, you can even be there as a prisoner and do a degree course and pass and become a lawyer and things like that. It's possible. But here in Ghana, our conditions in the cells is terrible. But the other side of the coin, too, is that, well, there is no place like home, so maybe if she's back home in Ghana to serve the sentence, well,
I know you're just being diplomatic.
So I don't want to have an opinion on this issue.
I see you're just being diplomatic. So the long and short is that she's better off serving her sentence in London. Right.
Well,
Captain, we are grateful for your time on today's big story. Captain Nkrabea Fadate is a lawyer. He has quite a number of experience in dealing with some of these cases. My name is Stephen Enti, and we're grateful to all of you who joined us on today's big story. Thanks to Dr. Kwesi Ening and George Yafi, who reported. We'll be right back with an interactive segment. Do stay.